This is bringing back some serious trauma, but I need to get this all out. If I don't, I'm going to go fucking crazy. Contestant number 0, would you like me to repeat the question? There were tallies carved into the flesh of my skin. I stopped counting when they surpassed 1,000. 1,000 cuts, 1,000 questions, 1,000 times I tried to kill myself. How long has it been? I let myself think. How many days, weeks, months, years had gone by? I was 19 when I appeared on the Golden One. I had no prior memory of applying for it. I hadn't even heard of the show. I just opened my eyes one day and was immediately blinded by neon light from the podium opposite me. 12 strangers playing for cash that didn't exist with stakes that were very real. The game never ended. We reached $1 million and then 1 billion, but the rounds kept going, questions thrown at us with no time to breathe. I didn't get an explanation why. I couldn't just walk off set because the cameras would follow me, and so would the snipers set up behind the fake audience of cardboard faces. Even if I was brave enough to, I couldn't. My ankles were bound in chains, tying me down to my podium. I counted my days through tallies on my skin. I started on my arms, and when I'd covered them, I moved to my legs. When my pen was snatched away from me, I used the pointy edge of a nail to carve each mark into my flesh. What was left of my clothes was filthy, shredded, and stuck to my skin, a plastic name tag glued to my chest. I was contestant number 0. I didn't even have a real name. If I referred to myself by my real name, I would be punished. Contestant number 0, do you have an answer for me? The host's voice was growing impatient, almost infuriatingly excited. If I failed to even try answering a question, I would immediately be punished. She loved it. Her voice and tone dripped euphoria. Like every wrong question, every punishment was her own personal brand of heroin. I never saw the host's face, except on the screen, a cartoonish grinning woman. We were not allowed to look behind us, only straight forward, facing each other. However, I could hear the click-clack of her heels dancing behind me as she paced back and forth, awaiting my answer. Could you repeat the question? I found my voice, barely a breath through my lips. I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. My voice was somehow deeper, hollowed out. I couldn't recall a time when I'd laughed or cried or expressed any emotion. I had always been numb. Always cold and hollow and wrong, always with a dull pain in the back of my head that never went away, and the endless ache threatening to buckle my legs. Contestant number 2 tried to sit down during round 38. She said she couldn't take it anymore, her body collapsing. She was shot point blank in the head. I don't mean she was shot quietly and painlessly. Contestant number 2 was given a frontal lobotomy, so it hurt. So she suffered. The bullet went straight through her eye. When she was screeching, begging for mercy, I landed on the death prize 6 rounds later, and she was shot again. This time for real. I could still see dried blood splatters staining the ground. If I looked closer, I glimpsed tiny shards of skull. Why, of course, the host's voice bounced around in my mind. But only if you say, please. I had to smile at the camera. If I didn't smile, I was dead. Contestant number 5 refused to smile, and her spine was pulled out. Please, I said through a big, cheesy grin. Once again, for $6 million, contestant number 0, please answer the following question. The remaining podiums around me lit up in electric blue light. There were only 3 of us left. How long had it been since I ate, drank, took a bath? The host cleared her throat. Contestant number 0, name the actor famous for playing the popular comic book character Deadpool. Fuck, Deadpool was Marvel, right? Gosling came to mind. The Notebook, the crazy movie with the heads in the freezer. What was that called again? You have 15 seconds, contestant number 0. Ryan Gosling. The name was in my mouth. It made so much sense. But when I was opening my mouth to speak, my gaze flicked to contestant number 8's podium. His decomposing body was still there, still shriveled up, the stink of rot and decay choking my thoughts into fruition. Across from me, Layla was trembling, lit up in neon light. Her eyes were unseeing, mouth curved into a silent cry. If I didn't open my mouth in the next 10 seconds, we were fucked. I wasn't just playing for my life, I was playing for theirs. I risked a glance at Jude, who was trying not to fall asleep, half-lidded eyes flickering. Contestant number 3, also known as Jude, was already dead. Jude died 40 rounds ago, yet through this fucked up game show, he was also alive. Jude didn't look alive. His cheeks had a grayish tinge, hollow eyes devoid of color, splintered nothing where a soul should have been. He was dead for 40 rounds, enough time for him to find peace or whatever, and here he was, pulled back to his partially decomposed body. I could still see the reddish smears of blood staining his lips and chin, the giant splatter of scarlet on the wrangled remnants of his college sweater. Jude was mouthing something very subtly, his lips curling around the words. Ray. I read his mouth. Ray, Ray, Ray. He was getting a little less subtle. It was really hard not to stare at the gaping cavern in his chest where his heart had been yanked out. That was Jude's punishment for not knowing. Who sang the song, Hit Me Baby One More Time? When he was awarded the Tear Your Heart Out prize, I thought it was metaphorical. That was until a masked man stepped onto the stage, strode over to Jude, and ripped his heart from his chest, squeezing it to pulp between his gloves. I remember watching the boy's eyes roll back, his body flopping to the ground. I thought it was fast, but in reality, Jude's heart had been carved from his chest slowly enough for him to feel everything. In those fragmented seconds before his death, he felt the sudden intrusion, the agony jolting his body. I think the masked man squeezed it, already pulverizing it before it left his chest cavity. Jude's mouth opened as if he was trying to speak, trying to cry out, but he couldn't. I watched blood seeping from his lips, beating down his chin. Then, with a single, violent tug, his heart was ripped out. At the time, I was so fucking scared I pissed myself through my jeans. I screamed into my podium, begging our tormentors to let us go. When Jude's body was dragged away, I felt numb. Now, however, I saw his death as a mercy. Unfortunately, Layla landed on the revival prize 40 rounds later, immediately reviving the boy when given the chance to. If that wasn't a horrifying enough punishment, due to him failing to answer 2 questions in a row, he was currently being pumped with some kind of poison or sedative. I had no idea. Whatever it was pooling in the tubes protruding into his neck and spine was fucking with his head. The bastard had answered, palm tree, to, how many months are in a year? I was force-fed spiders because of his answer. Now though, Jude was at least slightly with it. He actually cupped his mouth, silently screaming the answer, Ray. Contestant number 0. The host's sing-song tone rattled in my skull. The answer came to me the second Jude looked away, his eyes flickering closed. Layla's head dropped, her trembling hands going over her ears. Ray, Ryan. It came like a bolt of lightning. I was sitting with my parents watching Spider-Man. Dad was complaining about Tom Holland and said, "Why can't Deadpool play this kid?" To which I turned around and said, straightening up, I smiled widely at the cameras, trying to ignore the iron chains wrapped around my ankles. The answer is Ryan Reynolds. Ding. I almost collapsed, relief flooding through me, threatening to send me to my knees. But I held myself, leaning on my podium and willing my aching legs not to give up. Congratulations, contestant number 0, the host squeaked. That's 100 correct answers in a row. I could sense the host turning to the imaginary audience, and I had the sudden overwhelming urge to break the speaker playing fake applause. The large screen above us illuminated with personalized prizes. I almost cried out when I saw death. It was a rare award, only coming up 3 or 4 times since the beginning. They knew we were craving it. If I played my cards right, I could finally die. I met Layla's gaze, then Jude's. He tipped his head back, his dark eyes flicking to the screen. All of us could die, but I knew that wasn't possible because I didn't know the fucking answer. Alright, to win all of these prizes, you must answer the golden question. The host paused, like she could read my mind. However, this time, you have the ability to ask a friend. No, Jude's frenzied eyes found mine. Skip it. Shut up, Jude. Layla spoke up in a hiss. Can't you see what they're offering? It's clearly a trap. He slammed his buzzer, struggling in his own chains. I held my breath. I'm okay, I lied, and the fake crowd erupted into applause. I can answer it this time. I tried to smile at my fellow contestants, but they refused to look me in the eye. Jude glared down at his podium, shaggy dark hair obscuring his face. Layla pretended to inspect her fingernails, but I caught her sharp glance. I can barely remember it now, but she and contestant number 4 had a thing. I think it was partly desperation, a primal urge to be close to someone. During round 5, contestant 4 accidentally revealed his real name, and she clung to that human part of him. In a room full of strangers who stayed quiet, the boy wasn't afraid to open his mouth. They barely had a connection, but nervous glances were sent back and forth, and when they thought the cameras weren't watching, their hands would entangle, and Luke would pull her closer. Layla must have been beautiful at some point, someone who took pride in her appearance. There were still hints of a teenage girl in an adult body. Her dark blonde hair, now matted and tangled, was tied into pigtails framing a heart-shaped face. Her cheeks were hollow, cavernous eyes glued to the floor. The dress she wore, once a prom gown, clung to her in tattered strips of deep blue, barely clinging to a skeletal figure. Contestant number 0, can you confirm you would like to try the golden question? Tearing my gaze from Layla, I squeezed words out. Yes, I said. I want to try to answer it. Well, alright, the host giggled. Is there a certain contestant you want to bring back? I swallowed, a dull pain thrumming at the back of my mind. There was only one person I could bring back, who might know the answer. The crowd started to chant and my stomach contorted. Luke, I said, maintaining my strained smile. I'd like to bring back Luke. The host's click-clacking heels were behind me. Her breath tickled the nape of my neck. Alrighty, bring him in, please. A body bag was dragged in and I sensed our collective breath. Inside, the remnants of contestant 4, also Luke, who was force-fed battery acid for losing $600K. He was the smartest among us, the only contestant who seemed to know what was going on. Luke attempted to answer the golden question. He got it wrong, of course, but he tried. Since then, I had been waiting for the opportunity to bring him back for his brains. If there was anyone who could get us out of here, it was him. Luke's body was thrown in front of me. Contestant number 4 was younger than me, maybe by 2 years. Luke resembled your average college frat boy, with dark blonde curls framing his face and a wicked jawline. Freckles speckled across his cheeks, giving them a slight color. His ankles were still bound together with chains. He was already conscious, blinking up at the overhead lights, disoriented. Not as dead as Jude, but the guy still resembled a corpse. His lips were still stained, dried blood smearing his chin. What's going on? Luke's voice was a croak. When he rose to his knees, a guard shoved him back onto his stomach. It's okay, Layla squeaked, grasping onto her podium. Luke, just stay calm, alright? I don't know if it was a side effect of dying, but the boy's eyes only briefly flicked to her, narrowing, like he didn't know her and didn't want to know her. His expression was almost childlike, confused, like a baby deer. Either Luke was originally playing the long game with Layla, attempting to garner sympathy from our imaginary audience through a kindling romance, or more likely, he was avoiding drawing attention to her. You're good, man. Jude's voice was surprisingly soft. Just listen to the host. The host laughed. Why, thank you, contestant number 3. I'm blushing. The laugh track was getting louder, chipping away the remaining sanity I had left. The psycho bitch was right behind me. Just like last time, when I failed to answer, something ice cold slipped down my spine, phantom bugs filling my mouth. Okay, contestant number 0, for $7 million, and all prizes on screen, please answer the golden question. If you need help, I will allow you to pass the question to contestant number 4. Jude face planted his buzzer. We're so fucked. Don't, Layla whispered. He'll get it right this time. The screen lit up and I could see our otherworldly host filling the room, her demented smile slipping right off of her cartoon face. Contestant number 0, also Connor, what was the name of the child the group of you brutally murdered? The audience went silent. There was that pain again, this time striking in the back of my skull. I squeezed my eyes shut, but I could still see it. The seeping scarlet under my feet and slick between my fingers, but it felt good. It was a strategic kill, one that I had craved. The memory was in perfect clarity. A door opened, a disheveled-looking Jude poking his head through, armed with a backpack, a gun strapped in his belt. His unnerving grin sent me stumbling back. "Are you ready?" His voice was so loud in my head and piercing thunderclaps. Jude whipped a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, sliding a cigarette into his mouth. "He's my neighbor's kid." He caught my gaze, rolling his eyes. "What? I got you a kid, and now you're getting cold feet." "Fuck off, Jude." Jude smirked, lighting up a cigarette. The orange flame danced in his hollow eyes. "Good. Then I'm expecting you to finish him off." With reality and memory contorting around me, I dropped to my knees, half aware of warm and wet redness pooling from my nose. The pain sent my body writhing, my lips parting in a scream filling my mouth with rust. The memory flickered, and the face of a small boy filled my thoughts. I was giggling, hysterical bubbles of laughter escaping my lips. The thoughts didn't make sense, and yet they did. Twisted and sick and wrong, they were mine. I was a killer. I hunted down and murdered children, and I enjoyed it. In the memory, Jude and Layla joined me. Jude whistled. "Yep." He nudged the motionless lump with his shoe. "He's definitely dead." "Did you actually do it this time?" Luke stood in the corner of the room, a body bag tucked under his elbow. Layla shoved him, snorting out a laugh. "Obviously." "Contestant number 0. The host's voice cut through my thoughts. "Do you have an answer for us? We are waiting." I could barely hear her over my own screams. I was on my knees, wailing, my hands tearing at my hair. The name. I just needed the kid's name and I could die for what I did to him. Contestant number 0. I managed to find my voice, my mouth filled with blood. "Just give me a minute," I whispered. "I'll find it." I could see myself standing over a hollow grave in the forest. 3 pairs of shoes joined me. I flung a trash bag into the hole, lit a match, and watched our filthy secret ignite. "You have 30 seconds. Connor, Jude's voice was a whimper. "Just say a fucking name, any name." "Don't just say any name," Layla shrieked. An alarm rooted in the core of my brain started to screech. 20 seconds, contestant number 0. "Are those the Kill Bill sirens?" Jude cried, trying to wrench from his restraints. Something snapped inside me, and I slammed my head against the floor. Pain like lightning bolts. "I need longer than that," I bit out in a screech. I was suddenly aware I was on my feet, and my head was spinning around and around, my mouth filled with bile. I was a killer. I was a fucking killer, and I didn't deserve that prize. I didn't deserve to die. I could see each of them, Luke, Jude, and Layla, my accomplices, and my own hands stained with innocent blood. I could feel it staining me, painting me disgusting old red that would never leave me. Fuck. With one single disorienting jerk of my body, my forehead collided with the metal edge of my podium. I just wanted it to stop. Again. Agony ignited, but I didn't care. I wanted the neutron star collision in the back of my eyes. I wanted to paint the walls with my own brains. The blood on my hand was thicker, beating in thick rivulets down my wrists. Did the nameless boy have plans for a future? Did he have aspirations and plans for when he was an adult? Had he felt the butterflies of a first crush or the crushing weight of his very first heartbreak? Had this kid really lived before we murdered him? The answer was no. The answer was always no, 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 no. Every no was emphasized with another crash. I was choking on blood, but it didn't matter. I could escape. I could finally end it all. I streaked my hand through my hair, tugging it out. But once my fingers danced across my scalp, a different pain rattled through me. This one was raw and real, and I was screaming again. "He's my little brother." Jude's face crashed into my memory. But this time he wasn't smoking. Awareness began to blossom slowly, and I could feel the rugged skin of my scalp. Agony exploded again, and this time, Jude's face twitched into Layla's. "He's a kid from my mom's class." And then, through a fragmented flash of bright blue light, Layla morphed into Luke. "The kid is a little brat, alright." I grabbed him off of the street. "He won't be missed." Half conscious, my head spinning, I stabbed at my scalp again. The pain was duller, a fresh stream of red seeping from my nose. Different locations contorted across my mind. We were in an abandoned warehouse, in a school gym, in a basement, and the kid's face peering up at me was suddenly a little blonde girl. Then she had pigtails, a ponytail, blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes, all of them shattered, coming apart before becoming one singular kid. The little kid we killed. His smile was wide. No fair, you found me out. Fuck off. I punched myself in the head, and the boy fragmented into nothing. Without thinking, I dug my nails into my scalp, stabbing clumsy stitches. This time, the pain was almost euphoric. I had it. Pinched between my fingers was the reason why I was a killer. Don't do it. The little boy's voice was a tease. If you keep playing my game, I'll tell you a secret about another player. Fuck off. It felt good to tear that evil little brat out of my head. And then there was my identity slamming into me. I was Connor Fairview, 18, now 21 years old. I was a former student at Fairview High School. I was going to go to MIT. I had 2 younger siblings I loved, Ben and Kira. I wasn't a fucking murderer. Contestant number 0, the host's voice was faltering. You have run out of time. Now the facade had shattered. The host was nothing but a robotic voice in my head. That was getting fainter and fainter, almost a whisper. Stop. My voice was stronger and no longer with the suffocating weight of a crime I didn't even commit. I was the one in control. Stabbing my index into the open wound in my scalp, the world was so much clearer. The room we were in was nothing but a basement filled with fancy screens. When I stepped away from my podium, a bullet skimmed past me, my chains pulling me back, but I wasn't scared anymore. I was just playing with a kid who had lost his little fucking game, a kid who was now scared. When bullets stopped flying, this time clumsy with no real target, I raised my arms. Let us go, I said calmly, and we'll leave and won't say a thing. Connor, what the fuck are you doing? Jude whispered. You're not a killer, was all I told him. We're not killers. I found myself smiling even when I was close to falling apart. I believed I was a psychotic murderer for 3 years, when in reality all of the logic and questioning had been burned from my mind. I never questioned why there were 12 contestants, but only 6 killers. I never questioned sudden memories of strangers I had never met, memories that pointed to us being close. If I'm honest, I did want to kill our tormentor. I had seen so much, suffered and screamed and carved into my flesh. I saw bodies ripped apart, brains exploding in skulls and organs ripped from pulpy flesh. I had begged for my death, and I was never given mercy. So why did they deserve mercy? Instead, I turned to the screens. Let us go. We'll leave and we won't look back. There was no response for a moment before the female host's voice came back to life. In the corner of my eye, she was nothing more than an animatronic my brain was forced to believe was human. I could still hear the click-clack of her phantom heels. Do you promise? Promise? Jude's laugh broke into a sob. I'm going to rip your fucking head off. He stopped when our chains came loose. We're going. I managed to get out in a breath. It's over. Jude slowly stepped from his own podium. When he ran his hands through his own hair, prodding at his head, a shiver ripped its way down my spine. Leave yours in, I said, turning to a confused-looking Luke. I know it's fucked up, but whatever screwed with our minds is keeping the 2 of you alive. I nodded to the cavern in Jude's chest. He looked like he might argue before hesitantly pulling the tube from his neck, stepping from his podium, and immediately wrapping his arms around me. The dead boy was surprisingly warm. It felt good to finally hold someone after so long being isolated as contestant number 0. I didn't realize I was sobbing, allowing myself to break apart. Layla, after a disorienting moment, stumbled over to Luke, dropping to her knees and burying her head in his chest. We left the room, metal doors sliding open to reveal a long, white corridor. There was a 10-year-old boy standing in front of us, the same little kid we killed. I remember his eyes were wide with terror. I found it hard to believe a 10-year-old had orchestrated all of this, but there he was. Instead of speaking, he held up his iPhone. If you touch me, I'm calling the cops. I'm a minor, so you can't do anything. He was forcing his voice to sound adult and threatening, but without the host's robotic drone, he sounded like a pipsqueak. You promised you would leave. He pointed behind us at the fire door. So, leave. The kid visibly swallowed. Please. We did. Layla stepped through first, dragging Luke with her. then Jude. Wait. The kid stopped me in my tracks. I hope you can play with me again, contestant number 0. Thanks for playing with me. I asked him why he did this, and he just shrugged. For fun. His smile widened, fresh pain ricocheting across my skull. This memory was shattered, like peering through a foggy mirror when I squeezed my eyes shut. I was sitting on a silver table, my arms bound behind my back. The sterile white light bathing me was a room with no doors or windows. There was a figure looming over me, and pinched between his thumb and index was the thing that had contorted my brain. But I wasn't paying attention to the tiny grain of metallic rice between his fingers. The figure, draped in a white lab coat and pale blue mask, had familiar eyes. When he leaned forward and pulled back his mask, revealing an eerily similar smile, it was Jude, contestant number 3. He dangled something in my eyes, like a tease. It was my contestant number 0 name tag. I shook the memory away, hitting myself in the face. The kid could fuck with my thoughts. He definitely planted that memory to screw with me, right? The last thing I needed was losing my mind at the finish line. I left the kid, but his words never left my mind. Somehow, he actually let us go. Emerging from what looked like an abandoned warehouse, we were in the middle of nowhere, Nevada to be exact. May 2024. The last time I breathed real air, it was 2021, and I was a teenager. We called the cops, but according to them, this is way past our pay grade. I had to guess they were talking about Luke and Jude. When we told them about the warehouse and the kid, they looked at us like we were fucking crazy. I still have zero idea if they actually investigated it to find the others. I removed Layla's device, and she's like a different person. She remembers a life in Florida and wants to go back, but I've told her we have to stay together, at least for the time being. Luke and Jude are medical miracles, and I still don't know how to explain to my mother my 3-year absence, so we're still stuck in Nevada. I'm trying to find a job, and we're currently staying in a motel. Over the last few weeks, I've been getting increasingly worse headaches. I'm paranoid of every passerby, everyone who offers to help us. But most of all, I can't get that little psycho's words out of my head. I hope you can play with me again, contestant number 0. I'm fucking terrified of what is inside my head and what it's done to us. I feel sick writing this. After everything he did, I don't feel human. I'm covered in scars. I can't sleep or eat. I'm losing my mind. I'm shaking, but I can't get it out of my head. I think I'm still in the game, and I need help. Please help me. I think I'm in a new game. Even if I'm not, that little brat is still no doubt looking for players. Don't make the same mistake as me. If you ever find yourself in his game, just remember, you are not a murderer.